Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Callum.
And we're back in the radio studio for another Rise of Skywalker episode, continuing our review.
Well, I wouldn't call that a review. That was an impressions.
Sort of.
Our first thoughts.
Yeah.
Initial
reaction.
Thought,
yeah. So we're recording on Christmas Eve, but by the time I edit and upload this, it'll probably be around New Year's. So hope everyone had a good Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone. Yeah, so we're not recording at our usual time, so we're just going to record for a little while, and you know, if someone kicks us out of the studio, we might have to end this episode up early. But yeah, so I've uploaded all the old Star Wars Man vs. Movies Star Wars episodes, so people have listened to all of those. I recommend listening to all those, even though they're not, they're
a world away from what we are now.
But yeah, and also remember when we did the 2-hour breakdown of the Rise of Skywalker teaser trailer?
Yeah.
I recommend listeners go back and listen to that as well, because we had a lot of predictions and
I don't remember what we talked about. Did actually a lot of it come true?
Not a lot of it. Some of it did, but I think it was just an interesting discussion as well, especially just in terms of the Disney-fication and all that. So yeah, listen to that as well, in addition to all the other Star Wars episodes that I've been uploading before this. But yeah, there's so much to talk about, and I don't even know where to begin. So I was planning just to go through my notes and just talk about, we'll just pick a point and then talk about it and pick the next point. And then when we run out of time, we'll come back next week and continue. But we were talking... Oh, full spoilers for The Rise of Skywalker, just in case.
And pretty much every Star Wars movie.
Every other Star Wars property in existence. Although I've been a bit careful not to say anything about The Mandalorian, because I'm up to date and you guys aren't.
No,
so that's why I haven't been saying anything about Baby Yoda.
Is it related to the movies?
There is one thing that I wanted to say, but I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But
sorry, James.
No, that's all right. It's not a big deal. We'll talk about it on another episode, I'm sure. But yeah, so one thing we were talking about just before turning the mics on was because I was talking on the phone with Matt, our friend who's been on the show before, and he hasn't seen Rise of Skywalker, and I said, just please don't see it for your own sanity. For all that is good and holy, just don't bother. Don't waste the money like we did. Don't waste the time.
Because they didn't let us use our points.
Yes, that was our plan. Didn't work.
We tried
I knew it was too good to be true. We saved up all our rewards points.
We each had probably $50 worth of points.
Oh look, at least I didn't pay for food. You know what I mean?
I got a popcorn. I usually don't bother spending money on popcorn, but I was got a free popcorn. So
unfortunately, we contributed to the problem financially. So
yeah,
that's partially. We have to though for the show.
Yeah,
so.
If I'm not mistaken, this movie's making a lot less than Force Awakens,
justifiably
and
so.
Last Jedi, which is but it's still, because it we talked about this on another episode, because it's a modern movie that's coming out now. They always break box office records because of how expensive tickets are now. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the next Star Wars movie probably won't do as well, but it'll still break the opening weekend box office.
Yeah.
Because they always do. But anyway, so I was on the phone to Matt and I'm just please don't watch it. For all that is good and holy, just stay away. Don't waste your time. And he's like, oh, it's that bad. I'm like, it's just it's insane movie. J.J. Abrams is an insane person. He should be locked up. But we were talking before the show, and I was like, because Callum kind of liked The Force Awakens when it released, and I always hated it.
I still maintain that by itself, without any connections to The Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, yes, it's not a great movie, but it's not as sinful as the others. I feel like on its own...
In retrospect, it's the best of the new sequel trilogy. However, from the beginning, I've always said it's a truly terrible film. But... because we were discussing it before turning the mics on, and I was like, when watching Force Awakens, it's it's not a good movie, but it's you can follow along. It's a sane, coherent movie.
Amateurish, but it does follow
exactly
the general.
And it's J.J. Abrams, that's his style. All of his movies are based on nostalgia. I don't like any of his movies, but it's that's his... But we were talking after Rise of Skywalker, he's an insane man. He should be locked up.
I wouldn't believe that the same director who did Force Awakens
Yeah.
did Rise of the Skywalker, because it seems to me like Rise of the Skywalker was a test for some robot who just creates
like
film.
like an AI. They put a whole bunch of Star
Twitch
Wars.
directs a movie. You know, like people like Twitch plays a game.
They put a bunch of Star Wars references into an AI script generator, and it just put all the words. That's kind of how.
And then
feels.
they kind of filmed what the output.
And that's why there's like a different scene every 5 seconds, and it's just like
like it doesn't seem like someone directed it.
Yeah,
it seems like
it's just like random.
It was like a bunch of movie executives who just like, give me a camera.
Yeah, but like I feel like all of J.J. Abrams' movies have big problems, but it's like I think like Last Jedi broke him, and now he was just scrambling to and he like we talked about this in another episode. Like he's quoted as saying, "Fuck it, I'll do whatever I want," and this is truly the embodiment of that.
It really is. I do feel a little bad for him after the way Rian Johnson treated Star Wars, because we've established that JJ does like Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I imagine when he watched Last Jedi, there was some part of him was like,
I think that's
fuck Rian Johnson.
Yeah, I think that's, and we agree with him on that. Like, I think that's why Nathan was trying to defend the movie, because he like saw J.J. Abrams' dilemma. Yeah. But I feel like he went about it in he
did the wrong thing.
He had a mental breakdown.
He did the wrong thing, and he might have had some sort of breakdown.
He overcorrected.
Yeah, he overcompensated. Yeah,
he overcorrected. I feel a little sympathy for JJ. Not because not saying the movie is good. No. I feel like JJ was probably put in a bad situation with Last Jedi.
His work got trashed.
But
and he's like, how do I fix all the problems that Ryan put on my doorstep?
Yeah.
And create a coherent movie, which he didn't.
Which he couldn't,
he couldn't. Like, he probably could have.
He could, but it's like I said,
he could have fixed it, but he didn't.
Yeah.
He overcorrected, and it's
his ego got in the way.
Yeah,
it's like you said, his ego got in the way,
and he just threw in everything. Like he was just like he's like not only am I gonna ignore Last Jedi and try to pick up the threads from Force Awakens, he's like, I'm just gonna do whatever I want.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think it's funny because when we were talking about Last Jedi, we were talking about how it's directly fighting against Force Awakens, and then this movie will be fight, and that's what happened. Is all three movies are fighting each other, and it's like the battle of egos. Like Rian Johnson had a huge ego. He thought he's like, screw this, screw Force Awakens. I'm going to do whatever I want. He said fuck it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, but I feel like his response to directing Star Wars was, these nerds like their Star Wars. I'll show them what real Star Wars is.
But that's what I'm saying is like that was his version of fuck it. Like I'm going to throw everything out the window and do it my way. And then J.J. Abrams had to come back in and had his ego hurt by Rian Johnson and was like, well, now he said fuck it. I'm going to say fuck it.
I'm going to go harder.
Times a million and just go ham.
You want to trash my movie? I'll show you.
Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah. So, it's just funny how, like, not only are these movies fighting each other, but it's like the battle of the director egos.
This is going to sound kind of harsh, but I feel like this movie should be given the same, Rise of Skywalker, should be given the same credibility that, like, I want to say it's the Sonic the Hedgehog movie will be getting, but that movie might actually be decent. We don't know. But I feel like the way this new Star Wars movie is, it's just a CG-filled, nonsensical video game movie. Yeah. I'm like, it doesn't... people don't really treat it that way. Everyone's treating it because it has the Star Wars property.
That's a good point. If this was a video game movie, people would be like, this is dog shit. This is...
But because it has the Star Wars branding, it looks like a Star Wars movie.
That's what we've said. That's what I've said, at least from the beginning.
Yeah.
Is like, because it has the Star Wars logo, people are willing to forgive. Even people who don't like Star Wars went into Last Jedi and were like, hey, it's actually pretty good. And it's like,
there's a portion of the audience who said, I don't like StarArs and I like Last Jedi because it was contrarian to Star Wars.
Exactly. But then there's also people who don't like Star Wars but like Force Awakens because it's a dumb, loud movie. It's a dumb, loud.
It's a Transformers. Like, I like the Transformers movie, but it's a Transformers Star Wars
it's a superhero or a video game movie. It's just like loud and dumb.
It's a modern Disney movie.
Yeah, so that's the thing. If you slap the Star Wars name on it,
suddenly people are like, oh yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, actually it's not that bad. Yeah, it's like, hang on a second. But in this case, it's so insane and so extreme.
And people still defend it using the same logic they did for Force Awakens and Last Jedi.
It's like we talked about last episode, how unlike Last Jedi, more people are willing to criticize this movie, but there are still a lot of people coming out and saying how good it is or how it's not that bad.
I was browsing Twitter yesterday, and there were people who were, like, I'm not making this up, saying that the plot was insightful and well thought out. I'm like, I feel like the problem is people. I feel like they don't watch the movie; they just watch the action scenes. They don't think about it. It's like, well, there was that cool desert chase, and there was that explosions in that one scene that was really cool. What a sick film!
There's so much crazy shit in this movie. It's going to be hard for us to accurately review everything.
Yeah.
Without having a Blu-ray copy or a digital streaming.
That's actually another point I don't think I've mentioned yet. Like, I hated The Force Awakens when first watching it, but I saw it again because I was like, what's all the fuss about? Yeah. Like, why is everyone loving this so much? Like, I have to see it again to figure out. And then once I had my first reactions, second time I could, like, watch the movie, analyze it. Yeah. Same with Last Jedi.
You're a braver man than me.
Yeah, I had such an extreme reaction to it. I hated it so much, but the critics were loving it, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go back and and I truly hate that movie, but I was like, I have to watch it again.
We have to
and really
analyze why.
This time around. Nah. One and done. I'm never watching Rise of Skywalker ever again.
No. And that's I'm not going to say to our detriment, but it's going to be hard for listeners to understand.
Yeah.
Like, we need, like, usually in a review this scathing, we would give examples and we would say, at this point, this happened and this is why it's crazy and bad. But there's so much crazy shit in this movie that I can't remember at all.
When we did the Last Jedi review, like, I had very specific notes. I had very planned out. I had pages of, like, different paragraphs and dot points. And it's like I analyzed the film and I broke it down into different portions. Whereas this time around, I'm just like...
it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, and also...
the brain just shuts down.
And also, the format of our show has changed since then. And so now it's like more like a casual discussion. And so, it won't be as much as an analysis as maybe the Last Jedi review was.
Look, once it comes to streaming, I think we'll talk about it again when we have we can map it out.
I don't think so. I think once we get because in saying all of this, we're still going to do at least another episode on Rise of Skywalker because I have
6 hours might be enough. Yeah,
because I have so much to say, and I've still got heaps of notes to get through. But it's not going to be in like a proper analysis. Like, and there, like you were saying, like we can't go back and watch and analyze certain things. But
I just don't want to.
and that's the other thing. Is like, I
don't want to pay a game, man. I suffered once.
I remember when Last Jedi came out, and I was just like, this killed. Like, I hated Force Awakens. I hated Rogue One. But
this
Last
killed
Jedi,
a little child inside of James.
Last Jedi truly killed any excitement or passion I had for Star Wars anymore.
We probably heard us talk about it on the show before, but we did not want to actually go out and watch this.
And this time around...
We're at the movie theater, and I said to James, do we have to?
Yeah, exactly. Like, none of us wanted to see that movie. We just saw it so we could complain about it on the show. But it's just like... Last Jedi truly was a soul-crushing movie when it came to, like, Star Wars.
Next week, I review Cats.
No, don't even joke. Don't even joke, man.
Apparently it's weird.
Of course it's weird. I mean, I felt insane watching this movie. You can imagine how I feel watching Cats. So that's not. Don't even.
Yeah.
But what was I saying?
We didn't want to go see it.
Yeah, we didn't want to see it. But Last Jedi truly killed any excitement or passion I had for Star Wars, and most fans' passion for Star Wars. Even people who liked Force Awakens were excited to see where it went next. Last Jedi killed all that.
Yeah.
It killed it, like when they say kill the past in the movie, like they
literally mean it.
Yeah,
and
they literally did it.
History is proven to be on our side a little bit in this too.
Oh, definitely.
The more the years go on, the more people are like, maybe it wasn't so great.
It wasn't too long ago that people were saying anyone who didn't like it were just incel neckbeards and so on. I'm like, now it's like, the Rise of Skywalker sucks. Last Jedi wasn't that good.
It's like I said to you the other day. In a few months' time, there'll be a whole bunch of clickbait articles and YouTube videos about Last Jedi was the misunderstood masterpiece of our generation, crap like that. But anyway, it's like Rise of Skywalker is truly the first time no one wanted to see a Star Wars movie. Like, it was just like no interest. It's completely dead. And I was talking to my dad about this, and I'm like, where are they going to go from here? The Mandalorian, it's not great, but it's fun. Like, it's okay. And I think that's where Disney's engagement is going to come from now, is the Disney Plus stuff. The Obi-Wan series and whatever else. I think they're bringing Clone Wars back. And as much as I don't like that stuff, and as much as I won't like the future stuff, that's, I think, where Disney is, like, that's where they're at their best.
Yeah.
Because even though I was saying, like, in our Mandalorian review, how it feels like a Disney Channel show and not a premium streaming show. Like, because that's what Disney at its heart is. It's like fun, light entertainment. Now, that's not to say that they haven't made great theatrical films. Like, their animated, 2D animated movies, classic Disney stuff is amazing.
Never again. But yeah.
It's exactly. It's like Disney now. I'm talking about Disney now. 2019, 2020 Disney. It's like, they're just dumb fluff. It's like, it's almost... Like I said, clickbait articles.
Yeah, occasionally...
Like they're clickbait shows almost. I don't know if that makes sense.
Occasionally they'll resurrect an old IP for like a Toy Story 4 or something.
But
apart from that...
Yeah, so like they still make good stuff, but it's like when it comes to Star Wars, I think the only good stuff or decent stuff we'll be getting is from Disney Plus, just because I think that's where Disney shines. It's just making quick, light fluff. And I think, when Force Awakens came out, and that was years before Disney Plus was even...
a thing,
rumored to be a thing. And I remember watching it and thinking, like, this feels like a cheap TV show. And I think all of Disney Star Wars movies feel like cheap TV shows. And so it's no wonder that their Mandalorian, the Disney Plus cheap TV show, is the one that kind of works the best.
Yeah. I'd say that's fair.
So it's kind of like, like Disney Plus fits their... It fits their... It fits their version of Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's the safe kind of...
Yeah, it's the light entertainment you can, sort of...
Keep subscribers coming back as well. So it's like if you put out something half an hour a week or whatever, it keeps the subscribers there, keeps the money coming in.
Yeah, and I think just the style of it, the look of things, the special effects and the way things move so quickly and like, it fits that... Like Disney's Star Wars style is suited to their
it's like
TV.
Easily consumable kind of.
Yeah. But even their TV has its faults. Like The Mandalorian, and some of the episodes only being like 25 minutes. And like that's a very Disney Channel problem.
Yeah.
That they need to... I think we talked about this in the Mandalorian review. But it's like even that... It's,
but because, we were talking about when Solo came out and we were talking about, like people wanted a Lando movie. And I was like... I can't see that happening anymore, but I can definitely see a Disney Plus Lando show.
Yeah.
Very light, fluffy, kind of like Mandalorian, but with Childish Gambino.
That would be interesting.
Childish Landino.
That would be interesting.
It fits their crappy style, like crappy Star Wars Disney style.
That would be slightly risky because... Landino is... I guess is he kind of hinted at being at least bi-curious?
Oh, they wouldn't explore...
that's a load of shit. No, they won't...
they wouldn't explore that. Even if he was, they wouldn't explore that.
Yeah, we can expand upon this point since you brought it up. Last episode, we talked about how we really wanted Finn and Poe just to hook up. Like, just do it. But instead, all they did was have, like, two ladies kissing, like, out of focus in the background so they can cut it out for the international version of the film. But it ties into, which I think I've mentioned on the show before, like, Disney's fake wokeness.
Yeah.
Like, they pretend to be progressive when they're clearly not.
They're a very conservative company at their core.
At the end of the day, Disney's like, yeah, sure, we'll pretend to be woke for the Americans and the Western, but it's going to be in... segments that are easily editable, or
none of the main characters are ever gonna. They're never gonna actually explore it. It's usually said in interviews outside the film and not actually in the film itself. And this happened with Lando. Lando in Solo, his sexuality is just not mentioned at all. In Empire Strikes Back, he's clearly hitting on Leia. Like he's clearly got a thing for her. He's like a suave dude. Like in Solo, he just has no friends. He has no.
He floats with his ship, doesn't he?
But I'll get to that. So he has no friend. He has no flesh and blood friends. Okay. He has no flesh and blood romantic relationships, except he has his weird robot girlfriend. but it's like they have banter, but there's no.
Yeah.
Then of course in the outside interviews with the actors and the filmmakers, it was like, well, actually Lando's pansexual and all this bullshit. You know, it's fake wokeness. It's not explored in the film. Then you could argue it shouldn't be explored in a Star Wars movie. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I should say it shouldn't get bogged down in that.
Yeah. Only investigate if they're related. That's Star Wars canon.
Yeah. It's like it goes in Star Wars, it's heterosexual or incestuous. Nothing else. But anyway, what I meant to say was, like, if you are like, I want gay characters in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's representation.
Make Finn and Poe gay. Don't play it off into a side thing. You
and
know,
it doesn't have to be.
Don't say in interviews that your main character is pansexual, bisexual, whatever. Display it.
And it doesn't have to be aggressive either.
Yeah. Also keep in mind that it's a Star Wars fantasy adventure. The romance has to be sweeping and simple. The knight has to ride on his horse, defeat the dragon, and save the princess. So the princess, in this case, could be a prince.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It can be.
Poe should have saved Finn on like the last attack, and then they could have had a moment.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you need to show.
But that's what I'm saying is, like, if you are going to have it in the film, Star Wars isn't the place to explore it.
It's not a rom-com.
In any. It's not Marriage Story. You can't explore a relationship in Star Wars the same you can in an indie drama. But if you are going to have gay characters in Star Wars, and I'm for that, it has to be the same kind of romance a heterosexual romance would be in a classic fairy tale. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
And in a way, Star Wars is a good environment for that, because you can show it just as a normal relationship instead of being like, look, it's gay people.
Yeah,
look.
In the universe of Star Wars, they don't have to mention that.
It can just be a thing
because it's not based in our reality.
That's right.
It's not subject to the same politics or like the same zeitgeist as we have it here. We don't need... Star Wars can show it without being look.
That's what I've always, like, you know, I think I mentioned this on another episode. It's like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's a fantasy. It doesn't take place in our future. So you can just do whatever you want. Just you have to stay true to that idea, which is why I don't like in new Star Wars movies when they say modern phrases or... When you
mama jokes?
Yeah, when you see technology that looks like it's modern, or, you know, I even complain about a guy wearing glasses, you know. Like, it's stuff like that. You have to stay true to it, but you can be inclusive and progressive. But Disney is not. They pretend to be. It's like, remember when they remade the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast?
Yep.
And Gaston's friend, Josh Gad's character, and all the interviews were like, he's the first Disney gay character, yada, yada, yada. It's like, but in the film, it's not mentioned. It's not. It's
really. I remember
lightly hinted at.
They made a big deal out of it.
Exactly, but in the movie, it's lightly hinted at because he's singing about how much he loved Gaston and he's like dancing with a guy. But it's not. He's not actually in the film portrayed as gay. Like, it's fake wokeness. It's fake progressiveness. It's. I think they call it queer baiting. I'm not sure if that's the correct term. I apologize if it's not. But it's like Disney's going like, see, we have LGBT representation. You know, give us money. Asterisk. We don't actually care. Like, we're a soulless corporation.
It's kind of like false representation in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like representation for only the money's sake because of the positive headlines.
We talked about this vaguely. I think we talked about this in our first impressions review. That goes for race as well.
Yeah.
Like how they handle the race, black characters in this movie.
Race and gender as well, where we've talked about on the show before how Disney kept pushing Rey's the first female, you know, the original Star Wars didn't have a lot of female characters. Now we're doubling down on the amount of female characters. Our main character is female. You know, Finn is black, Rose is Asian. We're more inclusive, more progressive, more diverse.
But as you said, it ends up almost being like racist.
Yeah, exactly.
In some ways.
But one, they're poorly written, poorly developed characters, and that's the problem. Not their race or gender. That's not. And on top of that, they're pushing it so hard for their fake, cynical, money-grubbing reasons that it ends up kind of being racist and showboaty.
Yeah.
Like, see, we have gay characters.
look,
see,
yeah.
we have. Oh, yeah. It's the. You know, remember when people accuse the Republican Party in America of being racist, and they literally got a black person to walk out in the Senate.
Here's an African American Republican.
I have a black friend.
Yeah,
defense.
exactly. It's the classic. But I can't be racist because I have a black friend. That's Disney in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And they're the ones, when people who had legitimate criticisms like us of Last Jedi, and we were criticizing the film and the filmmaking and the storytelling, and Disney, of course, came out and Rian Johnson was like, you people are just a bunch of neckbeards who live in your basement, and you're a bunch of incels and racist.
But what's that got to do with our review?
Exactly. It's like, true, but that still doesn't mean Last Jedi's good. No, but you know what I mean. Like, it's
an easy defense against criticism.
Yeah, it's like it's fake wokeness. Like I said, fake progressiveness. Like, we're actually progressive. Also, tying into this point, where is the diversity behind the camera? All of the Star Wars movies have been written and directed by middle-aged straight white men, and Marvel, for all its problems, has slowly started to have more diversity behind in the camera.
To its benefit.
Exactly. So, and Kathleen Kennedy, who is a woman, should be a bit more self-aware or a bit more aware of the situation.
I'll defend her a little bit here. She's fighting the tide a little bit.
True.
Historically, she's one woman against an industry of
true.
white
So,
men.
I mean, J.J. Abrams, whether you like him or not, he's a big name in Hollywood. So it's like, if he shows interest in directing a Star Wars movie, I imagine that the publicity behind J.J. Abrams directing Star Wars is probably worth it.
Say, get Greta Gerwig.
Yeah, exactly. You can't, as a company, say we're so progressive, we're so... Yeah. And anyone who criticizes us is actually a racist or sexist, and then not implement progressive, diverse policies into your... Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No,
it doesn't even have to be the director. They could have like a quota for 50% crew diversity. And that includes, lighting people, camera techs, all that kind of stuff.
But I'm like, Marvel seems to have more of a right idea. And, we've always talked about how Star Wars needs someone like Kevin Feige to oversee it all, to make sure where everything's going. And I think Kathleen Kennedy's not...
She's not living up to that.
Because she doesn't know what she's doing. And everyone who's working there, doesn't know what they're doing with Star Wars.
And Star Wars is a hot topic. It's like a Marvel, everyone loves Marvel, yeah?
Yeah.
Like, Star Wars fans hate Star Wars as well. Like, it's a different sort of...
It's
a different sort of culture. Like,
look, I guarantee you, when Love and Thunder comes out, everyone's going to... There'll be a couple people who'll be like, I didn't like it. Yeah. But most of the people will be like, Taika Waititi does it again. Oh, you know what I mean? And that'll be us in the studio.
Yeah, can Taika Waititi do any wrong? I don't think so.
Taika Waititi should have done this Star Wars movie.
Well, he's a voice in Mandalorian, so he's already...
That's what I'm saying, is like Star Wars and Marvel are two very different beasts in that respect.
Yeah, but this also comes back to our conversation that we've had in maybe the Last Jedi episode, or you can't treat Star Wars like the Marvel Universe.
No.
The Marvel Universe is a live-action comic book series.
Yeah, the rules are different.
Exactly. It's like it's all intertwined and connected because that's like what comic books are.
Yeah.
But Star Wars is a pulpy Flash Gordon serial, adventure serial. You can't have it. This is the problem with Solo, where they tried to, they put in Darth Maul and they try to connect it to other things, and it's like no, it's a separate thing. Like, it should be.
I want to be a fly in the room where the Star Wars creatives are arguing about what to put in the movie, because they each hate different things about Star Wars and each love different things about Star Wars.
Do you reckon there's one guy in the boardroom who's like, guys, please, can we just make it like the originals?
That's actually
Marvel fans generally, if you sit in the Marvel creative room, everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
So to speak, comic page. Everyone's on the same page. They're all on the same, this is comics, this is what it looks like.
It's because Kevin Feige tells them what the way
Star Wars is different. I guarantee you, in the Star Wars creative room, there's a team. There's a guy who loves the prequels, hates the originals. There's a guy who loves the originals.
But
there's a guy who thinks The Last Jedi is the best movie he's ever seen, and they're all arguing all day.
That's an interesting point. It's because there's so much comic book history. There's definitely got to be a similar dynamic in the Marvel writing rooms or whatever, the Marvel crew back behind the scenes, where it's like one guy might have grown up with the 80s comics, another guy might have grown up with the 90s comics, another guy might have grown up with the 60s comics. So everyone has a little bit different idea of what Iron Man is, what Captain America is.
But at the same time, it's also less divisive.
Exactly. But I think at the end of the day, they can agree on the core... the core of the character.
Because that never changes, really.
Yeah, but in Star Wars, people probably can't agree on the core components.
Because of the beauty of comic book, long-running comic book series and characters that have stuck around for decades, you have that kind of... It's like a... I don't know if fluid is the right word, but it's like...
Oh, yeah, no.
It's like Iron Man starts in the 60s and he goes till now, and it's like you've got so many stories and arcs... And
so many villains.
Yeah, some of them good, some of them bad.
Some of them
depends on. Some of them depend on who's writing or who the artist is, and you can go back and you can pick out things you like. You can remove things you don't like. But at the end of it all, even with all the different interpretations of what this character is, there's basically an overarching... Here's what maybe Iron Man should be. Here's what Thor should be,
Like an essence.
Yeah. Whereas Star Wars, it's like you got the original trilogy. That's what everything should be. Everything other than that is just a corruption or a sort of, like a
bastardization.
Exactly. And then you've got, like you said, like there are people who like the prequels or who like, and then you've got the fact that whereas Kevin Feige is like, let's embrace all of comic books and take little bits, and I know all about... Then you've got Kathleen Kennedy on the Star Wars side, who's like, I don't know anything about Star Wars. You do whatever you want, JJ. Oh, you, Ryan, you do whatever you want.
And that would cause conflict.
Exactly. And that's why we're getting these shitty Disney Star Wars movies.
And I think that they focus too much on the Clone Wars and the prequels, because if you watch the new movies, it's very clear that Star Wars mainly consists of lightsabers, space battles, and CG. Where do we find those things most prominently? At least the first and third elements.
Yeah.
The prequels.
Yeah. We talked about this, I think, maybe on the Last Jedi review. It's like people are more generally sympathetic to the prequels.
It's going to sound mean, but it's also a dumber audience. They don't want to be sitting in bored while we see...
but I think it's also something we talked about where it's like people find the originals slow and boring, but the prequels, just by virtue of being made in the late 90s, early 2000s, are just automatically more modern.
Yeah.
Even though they're stupid and boring and makes no sense.
And even now they're dated.
And now you got the sequels, which are just really quick and moving and just like guys running and yelling, and it's like, that's what people want now. And maybe in 10, 20 years... I don't know, the movies will be directly beamed into our brain or something.
Instantly, and we'll just remember the movie.
So it's like, it's funny how in kind of making new Star Wars, you lose what Star Wars was, which was it came out in the 70s and 80s, but was essentially a remake or a reinterpretation of like a 1930s, 1940s, 1950s action serial, adventure serial.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to my boss at work, who's never seen the original Star Wars movies, and because she knows I didn't like the new one, and I'm comparing them to her, and I'm like, look, in the original Star Wars, there's like four main locations, and in each location, there's character growth, something happens which propels the story forward, and world building is achieved in each of the main locations. Yeah. In the new one, there's 10 locations. World building is crammed into like 1 minute.
Yeah.
And then there's the next thing, and everything's CG.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the new movies in a nutshell.
Has she seen the new ones?
No, she hasn't seen any of them. Okay. So she's starting with the originals.
Because I hate those people who don't watch the originals and then like watch the new ones, and it's like, these are so great. And I'm like, well, that's great for you, but...
Or like our old friend Andrew Jacobs, don't watch the originals, just watch the prequels. Yeah. That's all you need to know. But
that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying, is a lot of people are just like, the prequels is what Star Wars actually is.
And that's why we have these problems now.
Exactly, yeah. and actually, I talked about this, I think, in the Last Jedi review. I'm really scared for in the next 10 years, for all the filmmakers who grew up watching and loving the prequels, are now
when it's their turn to bat,
are going to start to make Star Wars films at Disney, and are going to make nostalgic films about how great the prequels were, just in the same way J.J. Abrams made a nostalgic film about the original
Do you think trade
trilogy.
Negotiations will make a comeback in 30 years? 20,
But
30
that's the other thing. Like, people forget that. All they remember is the space lasers and the lightsabers.
They remember the opening of Phantom Menace when there's two Jedi infiltrating like a Republic ship, and there's
the Trade Federation
ship, and there's like battles, and then they forget how boring the rest of it is.
Well,
the Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
and they remember the pod race. That's it.
Well, actually, this brings up another point. I know we haven't talked about the Rise of Skywalker at all, but
it's all connected.
Yeah, this is all connected.
Like the movies, it rhymes.
Yeah, like that's a good, interesting point you bring up. These new Disney Star Wars movies, not only the numbered sequels, but the spin-off Solo and Rogue One, they're completely pointless and unnecessary, and nothing happened in them, and they're all boring and stupid. But there's literally nothing interesting about them. The prequels are terrible, and I hate them, and we should not be saying the prequels are good just because these new movies are bad. But you can look back at the prequels and go, hey, that was kind of cool. Darth Maul's kind of cool. Double-edged lightsaber.
There was some interesting elements in them.
Pod racing, cool.
Yeah.
We got a good video game out of it. Pod racing.
Yeah. Fucking great. And, Plo Koon, that guy's pretty cool. There's a water planet, Camino. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Oh,
Yeah, like they're terrible movies, but they have interesting elements.
Yes, there's a few new ideas, a few interesting elements, a few cool designs, some new aliens.
Our boy George wasn't always on the money, but he's a
good idea man. He's a good idea man. He's a good world builder, but he's just a terrible writer and a terrible director.
But we don't get any of that in the new movie.
Now you get Disney, and they're trying so hard to be the original trilogies while
quick question.
Actively fighting against them.
Quick question, James.
Yeah.
How many desert planets did we get in the new trilogy?
Like 3 or 4?
Yeah, there was Jakku.
Okay.
The Burning Man planet, which I can't remember if it was ever named.
Tatooine at the end. I think that's about it. And then we got a couple of forest planets and a couple of
jungle planets. Yeah, exactly. Like they're all this fucking
give us something different.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not hard.
No.
But I think then, you can argue that the prequels kind of ruined certain planets. Like, it's like, well, we can't do that again because the prequels ruined it. But I think that was one of my major problems with The Force Awakens when it came out, is that it was trying so hard not to be the prequels that was afraid to do anything new.
Yeah.
And that's the whole problem. The problem with the new Disney movies is they have nothing new or interesting in them, and like we can look back on them and go like, well, that was pointless. Can't get anything out of that.
Waste of our time.
Yeah, at least the prequels, as terrible as they are, there's a couple of cool things you can take out of it. A couple of cool video games, a couple of cool toys.
And that goes for the same for pretty much each of the prequel movies. Like you get at least something interesting.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like whereas the Disney. Because I think I've talked about, like, I collect the old 90s Star Wars action figures, and I don't like prequels, I don't like the prequel figures, but it's like I have a couple, and, they're kind of cool. Darth Maul's cool,
Yeah.
Some of the aliens are really, some of the vehicles. But the Disney ones, it's like the Stormtroopers are just Stormtroopers, the TIE Fighters are just TIE Fighters. It's like all the same stuff as the original, so it's like, well, I don't need those, and I don't want them.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? There's no new stuff. There's no cool, interesting,
Yeah, that's it. There's nothing new. Like, we really got nothing new.
Yeah, we got nothing out of it.
Like, the one new thing that they want us to see is, like, what, Force lightning and healing? Oh, whoa.
Well, lightning was in the originals.
Is old,
but, healing... I don't want to spoil The Mandalorian, but I guess I already did by saying Mandalorian. But, that's... Like,
and that was also in the old books as well. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but Luke heals people in the old books, but it's also a lot slower.
Yeah.
It's like teaching the body to heal itself kind of thing.
That's the other thing we talked about, is like the embodiment and the way they show the Force in the original trilogy.
I don't want to use the word realistic.
No, but it's mostly because of technical limitations, but it also, to me, is what the Force is. Because otherwise, they're just magicians. They're not magicians. They're like
sorcerers.
Yeah, sorcerers. Which is, by the time you get to Rise of Skywalker, that's what they are.
Yeah, they're just magic people who can
just
move rocks.
Shooting, Like I've watched the first couple episodes of The Witcher, and there's like guys shooting like sparks out of their fingers, and it's crazy stuff. And it's like that's kind of what the Force has become now. Rather than it being...
It's the prequels version of the Force.
Sort of, yeah. A more extreme version of that. Whereas, in the originals, it's like, that's what the Force is. It's like more of a... What's the word?
Eastern...
Yeah, like Eastern philosophy, but where the the user is like slightly psychic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
it's not extreme, because otherwise the Jedi would be gods like they are in the new movies.
Yeah, that's right.
And they could do anything, and they could take over the world and destroy everything. You know, some people watch the prequels or watch the sequels and say, well, why didn't Luke just mind control people all the time? Or why didn't he just force push all the stormtroopers at the Battle of Endor and destroy them all? I'm like, because that's not what the Force can do.
It. That's one thing I can't stand.
Yeah, they keep power creep, I think you called it.
Yeah, power creep. That's one thing I can't stand about the new movies is they turn the Force into a superhero movie where it's like they shoot beams out of their hands or whatever.
Like I kept calling Rey Superman because she is. She's a demigod. Anything.
Yeah, she's literally a demigod.
Yeah,
and if you look at the originals and people are like, oh well, why doesn't Luke do the Jedi mind trick? In the old canon, different abilities were harder for different Jedi to learn because each person's different. It's not like I have the Force, so I can do anything. If people have to learn. Yeah. And then they find out their strengths and their weaknesses.
Yeah, I might be wrong. This is just going off my very vague memory from when I read the books as a kid and whatever. But Leia could use the Force just as much as Luke. But her strengths lied more in like empathy.
That's correct.
Empathic.
No, that's correct. Luke was much stronger in like other fields.
Like physical,
that's correct.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but now you get Rey, and straight from the bat, they're like, oh, she can do anything. Why? Because she's a Jedi.
I think that's one of the things the prequels ruined is where, you know, in the original Star Wars, you don't really see what the Jedi were when they were at the height of their powers, or what they were when they were an active order. But to me, it's like they were kind of warrior monks.
That's right.
They were kind of like Shaolin monks who lived isolated on a temple, but they were also
kind of like shamans
a bit of Bushido, like samurai, Bushido code samurai, but also they were like Knights Templar. So it's like a bit of different.
Grab bag of different older philosophies of
and so it's
warrior
like
knights, holy knights,
kind of holy knights, Whereas then George Lucas comes in with the prequels and fucking ruins it by making the Jedi space police.
Yeah.
They have the biggest building on the capital planet. It's a huge marble structure like the fucking Vatican City. he makes the Jedi all wear the same robes, like it's a uniform.
Yeah.
It's just dumb.
They're meant to look like monks.
Yeah, it's like they have...
but look what you're living in. Is this a parallel to the Catholic Church here?
And
you're wearing robes, but you all got gold rings.
If you're a trainee, you have to wear a specific braid, and it's like there's like a uniform. And he turned the Force into like... He turned teaching the Force into having literal classrooms with small children using like little training lightsabers. He's a dumb, idiot, insane person. He ruined it.
Don't worry, Anakin took care of that.
But that's when people saw that automatically became what their idea of the Jedi was.
Yeah.
And I think, Last Jedi and Rian Johnson kind of took that and said that's why Luke was like, the Jedi suck. And people were like, oh, that's so smart because the Jedi did suck. But I'm like, no, that's because George Lucas ruined it.
Yeah.
What the Jedi were actually warrior monks, holy knights.
They kind of started to fix that. They don't have a uniform. I don't know how far it got in the books because I haven't read all the books.
Yeah,
but I know that after Return of the Jedi, Luke's school is much more stripped down.
Exactly,
it's much more like that Eastern.
Exactly, to me, the Jedi have always been like more loosey goosey.
Yeah.
It's like you don't find a small child and say to his parents, I'm going to take him and train him.
Enroll him into the academy. That's going to be 100,000 credits a semester.
It's not Hogwarts. It's not a school. There's not a curriculum.
That's right.
It's more of like an Eastern, like you go to a temple.
If you have the calling.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you have the ability to feel the Force, it's like you go to a temple and it's like, oh, and Luke comes down. And he's like, hey, I can train you,
Yeah.
That's why I always like Kyle Katarn in the original expanded. He was an Imperial stormtrooper who jumped ship and became like a free agent, kind of gun for hire, ended up working for the rebellion, helping to steal the original Death Star plans. It was very convoluted, but whatever. Eventually, he kind of found out he was Force sensitive, and Luke was like, hey, I can train you a bit. He ends up training him. He ends up building a lightsaber, and he becomes a great Jedi. That's what the Jedi should be.
Yeah.
It's not fucking school for... It's not X-Men. It's not a school for gifted children, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the prequels ruined it, and the new Disney movies reinterpreted it the way the prequels did while trying to actively ignore the prequels. And so it's like always fighting each other. I guess it's the same thing we were talking about in the writing room, where the people making these movies have perhaps different ideas of what the Force is.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a one clear essence.
Yeah. And
I think that's one of the reasons the original expanded universe, mostly in the 90s, was so great, is because the prequels hadn't come out yet, and so the vision
was only the original trilogy.
The ideas, the vision hadn't been tainted yet.
That's right.
Because people could go, well, the only thing we know is from the original trilogy.
The trajectory was in a very certain direction.
Yeah.
Look, one thing I hated, and this is a controversial opinion. One thing I hated about The Last Jedi was that it kind of democratized the Force.
Yeah.
It was like everybody can be a Jedi.
Yeah.
Every kid you see on the street corner, every man, woman, and child, they can be a Jedi. They're all Force sensitive. I was like, that kind of, to me, negates the knight in shining armor story, because
makes it less special.
If everybody... No, but like my feeling is, if everybody can be and will be a knight in shining armor, then you can't have that story anymore.
That's true.
Like there has to be that one person who has the ability to help people, to be charismatic.
I think we talked about this on a previous review where we're like, Star Wars is the traditional peasant farm boy who becomes the knight.
Yeah, that's right.
So if all the peasants are automatically knights,
that's a very different story.
You get rid of it. Yeah, that's an interesting story.
Yeah. But that's not a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know people were really pissed off at JJ because they're like, how dare he stop every man, woman, and child from being a Jedi? I'm like, I don't agree with what JJ's done, but I don't think every man, woman, and child should be Force sensitive. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
Because it's always been about that.
If you are going to make that argument that everyone is Force sensitive because the Force is in everything and in between and in bodies, everything, then you should argue that there are only certain people who can access it.
Tap into it,
not because of midichlorians and not because of the amount of cancer in their blood, but because of their belief in themselves, which is what I've always loved the original trilogy about. It's that traditional like hero's journey where it's like the more you believe in it, the more you can wield the magic. Because
I feel like the fun of Star Wars is I could be Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or in the new generation movies, I could be Rey. That's not about gender at all. It's like you are the hero.
That's
like when you're watching, it's like you sympathize with Luke because you want to be that farm boy who stops the Empire.
And like I think when it was revealed that Luke was Darth Vader's son, that didn't negate the fact that he was a farm boy who became a knight. Like,
it didn't change his backstory.
It didn't change his... It changes his backstory to an extent. It didn't change his journey.
His worldview. It didn't
I think then again the prequels ruined this, where they introduced the prophecy and the rule of two, that Anakin was the chosen one. And I'm like, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Darth Vader, Anakin was a Jedi. He got corrupted, turned to the dark side, became Darth Vader. His son was a simple farm boy who became a Jedi Knight.
Like, I understand
the Force is strong in their family, but that doesn't mean that other people can't be strong in the Force. I think that's one of the things maybe Rian Johnson was trying to do with The Last Jedi with Rey, was like, she's not a Skywalker, she's not connected to anyone, she's just a powerful Jedi on her own. And I think Callum, probably more so than anyone, liked that idea. And I agree as well.
Yeah, when there was all this talk about, is she going to be a Skywalker? Is she going to be a Solo? Is she going to be this and that? I was like, we don't want to rehash old ground, but the idea that she's no one special is literally the best place you can take her.
But in saying that, if she...
Palpatine!
Yeah, which is fucking dumb. We'll talk about that. But in saying that, if Rey was introduced at the beginning of Force Awakens as Rey Skywalker, Luke's daughter, no one would complain. That makes sense. That's what the original EU did.
Yeah, that's right.
The Solo twins.
Yeah.
And then Luke has his son Ben. It's like we're following this story not because the Force is strong in their family, but because they're the main characters of Star Wars.
You make it's so simple when you say it like that.
They're overcomplicating it. They're thinking too much about it. It's like these movies should have just started with Luke has started his new Jedi school. He has a few students, different races, different genders, different alien species. And he has a daughter or a son, and he's training them.
And they go off on an adventure or something.
Yeah, that's where the stories continue. But J.J. Abrams had to do his mystery box bullshit and say, who's her parents? And then Rian Johnson had to come in and be like, they're nobodies. And then J.J. had to come back and go, well, we have to explain how powerful she is. And, well, she's a Palpatine.
Which is weird, because... Like, bringing Palpatine back, you know what,
which raises a lot of other questions as well.
It's J.J. Abrams, member Palpatine, membership.
Yeah.
One thing I thought about over the weekend about Palpatine is, it goes back to the prequel movies.
Yeah.
Clones, right? They perfected clone technology.
Yeah. That's the other thing.
So Snoke,
wait, what the fuck?
Snoke is a failed clone.
Yeah.
Why is Snoke a failed clone? Why isn't he A grade? Why isn't that whole auditorium where we see Palpatine in just mini shaves?
What's his name? Mary, not Pippin. Mary is in this movie.
Yeah.
And he has a throwaway line. He's one of the rebel soldiers at the base. He has a throwaway line of like, maybe he's some sort of Sith cloning technology. And I'm like, no, cloning technology is just a regular thing.
It was used quite.
This is Star Wars, remember?
Yeah. Now, you could
I know
argue,
you're ignoring the prequels, but it was used fucking prolifically.
You could argue that like because the Emperor is so old and evil that it's hard to clone him. But
that's weak.
That's weak.
They've perfected this clone technology.
Yeah. Which I mean, we could talk about the prequels for every episode ever, but like. I'm going to go on another tangent, but it's like the prequels also ruined cloning and they ruined the Clone Wars. Again, the Clone Wars in the original canon before the prequels came out in the original EU is like this faraway ancient war. No one really knew about it. In my mind, it was originally in the original script for Empire Strikes Back, Lando was supposed to be a clone. And the idea of the clones were that they were a race of people who didn't procreate normally, they cloned themselves. And that the Clone Wars had something to do with that. That idea was eventually dropped and never really picked up again. In the original EU, the Clone Wars was never really explored. I think that was George Lucas's one rule, if I'm not mistaken. They mention it. They say, there's characters from the Clone Wars. They say that that's old Clone Wars technology, but it's never really explored. And I like that idea.
Yeah.
But to me, the Clone Wars was an important thing because it was like some sort of race of people who maybe got up in the Emperor's grill, and that he sends some, troop, and the Jedi were kind of tangentially involved, Yeah. It's like then George Lucas, of course, comes with the prequels, ruins everything again, and he's like, no, it's just a clone army who are stormtroopers, which now negates stormtroopers in the original trilogy who are just conscripted soldiers. And the Clone Wars only lasted a few years, which we don't see on screen. The Clone Wars is named after the army that fights them, and not any event or do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But this now renders Snoke's a clone basically bullshit. Not bullshit. That happened, but it's like, why is Snoke a failed clone? You have access to unlimited resources. You have an unlimited fleet. I'm sure you can find clone technology that was fucking everywhere in the prequel times.
Yeah.
You were alive in the prequel times. You were the bad guy orchestrating shit now. You were probably cloning yourself then.
Let's segue into Dark Empire. Dark Empire is a mid-90s comic book trilogy, like 3 volumes, that takes place like 5 or 6 or so years after Return of the Jedi. And this is the big event in EU history that everyone who knows the EU knows about, where the Emperor comes back as a clone.
Yeah.
And I'll straight up admit, it's dumb. It's not great.
It's not particularly well executed,
But it's really fun. Like, I reread it recently. It's really fun.
The comics, right?
Yeah. They're comics. They were never novels.
I have them. They're okay.
Yeah, they're fun, right? Like, and it takes a logical progression from where Return of the Jedi ends and where Dark Empire begins and takes the story. The Empire has been pushed back. There's like a lot of civil war and infighting within the Imperial factions. The rebellion has restarted the New Republic, with the help of Leia, who's part of the the new Senate or whatever. Yep. They have children. Her and Han have children. Have been married and have children. Luke's gone off on a journey to find other Jedi and to start a new Jedi Order. It all makes sense.
Yeah. All sounds pretty good to me.
Now the Emperor comes back and reunites the Empire, and he has a clone body, and he's like, aha, my evil essence can every time I die I just inhabit. Yeah. I've died many times. It's kind of silly, and then Luke fights him and whatever.
Doesn't he also have to go to the dark side to do it?
Oh yeah, we should also mention that. That's the dumbest part. Is that in the first volume, Luke, the Emperor's like, just join me, and Luke's like, okay,
and then he momentarily becomes a Sith.
He becomes like a dark side for like 5 seconds, and then Leia goes to save him, and he's like, I wasn't really dark side, I just did it to save everyone. And he's like, and then they kill the Emperor clone, but then the clone, then his essence goes into another clone. But yeah, so that's kind of silly, but it's a fun adventure. It fits in with Star Wars. Yeah. It takes the end of Return of the Jedi and moves it forward. It moves the universe forward, moves the world forward, introduces interesting new characters and worlds. They do the planet-killing weapon again. It's kind of boring and dumb.
They do it again in Children of the Jedi. It took them a while to get over that device.
Yeah, but it makes sense. Yeah. Now you get the Disney movies, which makes zero sense. The world has not gone anywhere since Return of the Jedi. The characters have not gone anywhere since Return of the Jedi.
You know what it is, though? I'm pretty sure when because remember how much we hated it when they were like, the EU is no longer canon.
Yeah.
Like, fuck the EU. That was basically their stance.
That's the point I'm going to make in a minute.
I feel like the problem is someone high up in Disney and Lucasfilm don't like the EU. They probably like the originals, but they don't want to...
I think we might be getting kicked out of the studio, so we'll pick up this point in just a second. We'll pause, and then we'll pick up this conversation thread.
What were we talking about? That's right. We're talking about how
So dark... and they got rid of the EU.
And then they seem to not want to follow the traditional trajectory.
Yeah, but see, that's what... From when Force Awakens came out, and I said this many times in my Force Awakens review and other episodes, like, I understand why they didn't want to stay beholden to the original EU.
Yeah.
Like, because you can't pick up 30... Because in the original EU, so much stuff happened, you'd confuse everyone.
Yeah, of course.
And you'd have to pick up so many threads and explain so much. So I understand why they didn't do it. But if you are going to ignore all the EU, you have to do a parallel timeline where similar things happened.
Yeah, in maybe a more simpler way.
But in a simplified, streamlined fashion that you can explain in an opening crawl and through dialogue in the first movie, which in this case would be The Force Awakens. But they don't do that. Nothing between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. The only thing we know happens is that Kylo turns to the dark side and destroys Luke's temple.
Mm.
Other than that, what do we know happens?
Nothing, man.
We don't know how the Empire becomes the First Order. We don't see how the New Republic gets established and then seemingly disappears and the Resistance rises up with Leia at the helm. We don't see how Han and Leia break up and Han disappears.
Here's the thing, though, James.
Without his ship.
All of these questions are answered in the new comics and or books.
Yeah. But see, it's like... So you're telling me the EU ends up becoming the... So we talked about this actually on the old episodes, how originally it's the original movies are the main...
The canon.
And then everything outside that is an expanded supplementary...
optional canon.
Yeah. Whereas now it's kind of reversed.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you kind of have to read all the books and comics to get all the story and the lore and the world building.
Which we're not going to do.
And then you watch the movies just as light entertainment fluff.
You know what, like, let's just say they stop making main Star Wars movies after Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
I might pick up the new EU if it's like set years after Rise of Skywalker, because I'm sure authors can come up with interesting stories in this, hot mess of a universe.
Yeah.
Like, that's interesting because I trust authors more than I trust JJ.
Yeah.
But... like, I don't know if the quality of stories we'll get will be as good as the original EU.
And this is the other thing is the original EU was based on the original trilogy.
That's right.
And so it took that and it ran with it, and it had so much rich world to play in.
We've talked about Thrawn on the show before. Yeah. You look at the Thrawn trilogy, and that is the quintessential. Yeah. If they were going to make 3 movies after the originals, like the Thrawn movies are the perfect trilogy.
Okay, so I got so many points, I have to write them all down. So I'm not going to be able to remember them all, but like. I've gone. My brain's gone on so many different tangents right now. I can't.
Well,
process.
I'll just explain my point.
Continue your point, and then I'm going to go back to another point I had.
Like, so after Return of the Jedi, they needed a big, a new, interesting bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. And who was that? Well, they're like, well, how about we make a Grand Admiral who was lost, and he comes back.
That made sense because it's like 5 years after Return of the Jedi, the New Republic has been established. Yeah. But they're still fighting the remnants of the Empire. Yeah. And the remnants of the Empire are kind of held together by the Grand Admiral Thrawn. Yeah. Who is like a master tactician.
He's an interesting bad guy. He's not like the Emperor.
No, exactly. He's not like any other like bad guy we've seen before. He's just super smart. He's a strategic
genius. Yeah. And that's what was so interesting is he was a compelling villain because he would study a civilization's culture to understand their battle tactics, to understand how to defeat them.
Yeah, this is one thing I've always said since Force Awakens came out. It's like, that was 5 years after Return of the Jedi. This is 30 years. Yeah. So you can't just say, well, the Empire is still floating around and the New Republic is trying to kill. Like, you have to have established that has already happened and the Empire are gone. If you're going to introduce the First Order, you have to explain where they came from and how, why they're so powerful, you know? What they should have done was gone like, you know what? All that stuff did happen. They defeated the Empire. But maybe there's like one Grand Admiral left and he's got a small like terrorist organization of that called the First Order. Yeah. And whatever. I'm just making shit up. But like, you can see my point.
If we compare Thrawn to Snoke, it's like Snoke's really just Palpatine light.
Exactly.
Like, who cares? We've seen that before. He's been defeated already.
It's lazy and like
he's ugly and like he's not covered by a hood as such.
You have to do something different.
And that's what they did in the old books. They I mean, don't get me wrong.
I mean, then they did Dark Empire, which, you know...
Don't get me wrong, they did, as we say, they did a lot wrong.
I've got more to say about that.
They did a lot wrong, but they also had a creative force in them.
I've got so many points, I'm going to try to go through them all. If, theoretically, you know, I said, you know, Thrawn trilogy takes place roughly 5 years, you know, Dark Empire takes place roughly 6-7 years after Return of the Jedi, roughly. But these movies take place 30 years, so you can't just redo those.
I would have to pretend there's no history between.
I would have been happy. That's what I was going to say. I would have been happy if they pulled a Zombieland 2, where yes, it's 10 years after, but really the story that takes place only makes sense if it happens about a year after the original film. Does that make sense? The character, you know, like Wichita and Columbus, like their relationship, having been together for 10 years, and now they're getting on a rocky footing, and
didn't quite feel
and Little Rock kind of growing up and going off and want to find people her own age doesn't really make sense when they've been together for 10 years. But it was fine. Like, it worked. I would have been happy if worst comes to worst, and it has come to worst with the Star Wars universe, if they skipped 30 years and said, well, not much happened in that time, here's Dark Empire. You know, and then the Emperor comes back and we got to fight him, and Luke has some Jedi and he, you know.
Yeah.
That would have been much better. You know, that still would have sucked, but in comparison to what they did, it would have been much better. But alternatively, like I said, what they should have done was really developed a parallel timeline to the EU, saying here's where Return of the Jedi ended and here's where The Force Awakens began. And J.J. Abrams, because he's such a poor writer and poor director, he doesn't have any clue what he's doing. As far as I know, he never even thought about that. If you're going to make a movie like The Force Awakens, you have to sit down and almost write a little, not even a novella, like just a little outline about how the universe went after. And you don't technically have to show it to anyone, but it would be great. Yeah, but it would be great if you shared it with the actors and, you know, the other crew, you know, the other creative crew members to say, here's kind of how the history went afterwards. Yeah, you know, the rebellion became the New Republic. And they pushed the Empire back and defeated the Imperial Remnant. And Luke started a new Jedi school. And now, 30 years later, here's where we pick up. But they didn't do that.
Yeah, they didn't know.
And they clearly didn't. I don't think they even tried. And I don't think they even had the ability, especially, you know, as we've seen with J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson's writing abilities when it comes to Star Wars, I don't think they even had the ability in their minds to do that. Because us just in this studio talking shit have created such a rich world in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens.
Look, I have this, I don't know if I've told you before, but I have, like, the perfect Star Wars movie in my head.
I have so much headcanon.
Yeah.
You know what? Next, you know, we've spent over an hour not even talking about Rise of Skywalker, but actually I think maybe next episode or the episode after, I've got ideas about how to make Force Awakens a good movie and how to make the Disney trilogy good, while also not doing directly the EU and while also kind of, you know, anyway. Let's get back to Dark Empire and tie that off, and then I think we should move on to actually talk about Rise of Skywalker.
As much as we hate Star Wars, we also love Star Wars.
Oh man, we should just talk about the EU, man. I've got all the. You know, I reread the Thrawn trilogy comic book adaptation because it was originally a novel, 3 novels, but I didn't have time to read all the novels, so I was like, I just reread the comic book adaptation, which is kind of like the Cliff Notes version. It's not a great way to. But yeah, like just I love all those coming. Crimson Empire, like I've got them all. So yeah, like we mentioned, Dark Empire, Emperor comes back in your clone body. If they were gonna pull this Palpatine bullshit, should have just started it in Force Awakens and developed it over 3 movies. Also, yes, it would have been dumb. Yes, people would have complained, including me.
Yeah, they could have had like sightings of Palpatine, like throughout the Empire.
No. I'm saying like, straight up start The Force Awakens.
Yeah, no. But like they could have had in the first movie, they could have teased Palpatine's return.
No, don't even tease
just, like,
it.
Little clones of Palpatine being spotted.
I'm not talking about like as a tangential, like someone spotted or heard Palpatine. I'm talking about the villain of Force Awakens should have been Palpatine, and they develop a clone, I should say, of Palpatine, and then they develop that over the course of 3 movies, ending with the final destruction of. Yeah, which would they do in Dark Empire?
But whereas Dark Empire, for its faults, Dark Empire doesn't have chimps.
Yeah, it doesn't have that stupid shit. But so like,
I'm sorry, that was just it popped into my head. I'm thinking of cloning tanks on like chimps. Dumb.
Yeah, so like, yes, I know J.J. Abrams was maybe trying to do something with Snoke. I don't know. Probably nothing. Rian Johnson ruined that. And yes, J.J. Abrams had to pick up the pieces and introduce a new villain, but he couldn't just pull a random guy, so he had to bring Palpatine back. It would have been a much better decision just to have Kylo be the main villain now. It was a bad idea. But, like, yeah, Snoke is clearly just a rip-off of the Emperor. Whether he was originally supposed to be a clone in The Force Awakens, and, you know, who knows?
Doubtful.
They might have retconned that. Just start the movie, the new trilogy, with the clone Emperor has come back and he's the main villain of the series. That way, at least, then you could also say he's the main villain of the prequel, prequel sequel. It's dumb and I hate it and I wouldn't like it, but in hindsight and in comparison to what we get...
It will bind everything together at some level.
Also, one thing in the Dark Empire is that when he clones himself and puts it... It's a younger body.
Yeah.
So he doesn't just look like the old Emperor. Like he's just like a young... And he fights with like lightsabers and whatever. But there's a bit where Luke destroys all the Emperor's other clones, and the Emperor doesn't have time to kind of recreate his like new clones. And so if you kill this last clone, you kill the Emperor for good. And that's what they should have done with this new movie. But also there's something that happens in the end of the Dark Empire trilogy, is where the young clone, because of the evil Sith essence, the young clone starts to age rapidly and deteriorate.
Yeah.
This sounds dumb, but in comparison to what we get, it would be amazing. Start the movie with Snoke, or whatever his name would be. We'll call him Admiral Smith. And he's the new villain. Okay? And it's like, okay, we got a new villain, cool. And then the second movie, he starts to deteriorate, and they're like, "Sir, your body, and he's like, "Oh, go away,
don't
go
worry
away."
about it.
And the third movie, they get Ian McDermott, the original actor, to come in, and he fully deteriorates, and it was like a twist.
That'd be pretty cool.
It's dumb, right? And I would have hated it, but in comparison to what we get, it would have been incredible.
What a reveal, though, right?
Yeah,
Can you
right?
imagine?
It's like that he was actually the clone emperor the whole time. It would have been great. Anyway. What we'll do, we'll spend the next half of the show talking about Rise of Skywalker, and then maybe next episode we'll talk about like how to make Force Awakens good, or we'll see how we go, because I got a lot to talk about, and we haven't talked a lot about the actual Rise of Skywalker. Let's talk about the title first. Everyone keeps calling it, me myself included, Rise of the Skywalker. Just because the grammar's I don't know, and it's vague,
I would also another title for it is The Rise of Our Blood Pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that joke we made, even before it came out.
Yeah, and also it's like we talked about. I think we might have talked about it when we talked about the teaser trailer. But it's like all the titles for the new movies are so vague and insulting, and this is just another one of that.
I mean, it's like the original Star Wars. Then there was The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Obvious. Then there's Return of the Jedi. Obvious. It's not hiding anything.
No, exactly. That's the problem. J.J. Abrams and he's like
they have to hide.
Yeah, he should have just started.
The names mean nothing. The Force Awakens. What did it awaken?
Yeah. Why was it asleep?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was never asleep. It's always awake.
Yeah. Who's the last Jedi? Why the Jedi ending?
Yeah. Exactly.
Who's right? Who's the Skywalker rising?
And that's just more mystery box bullshit from JJ because they killed Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi. Yeah. So it's like, well, there's no Skywalkers left. Yeah. So who's the rising Skywalker? Is it Ben? Yeah. Oh, we don't know. It could be Rey.
Out it's Rey Palpatine.
Which also
isn't the like Luke Ghost Luke tells her yes, you're a Palpatine, but you don't have to fall into that.
Look.
Shouldn't she embrace the Palpatine name and
change it? I saw a
web. The movie could have been called The Rise of Palpatine, and it would have been like a little
double. Yeah.
I saw a funny comic on Twitter, a web comic, and it was a piss take of the final scene of The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And instead of saying the woman says, "What's your name?" and instead of saying Rey Skywalker, she goes, "I'm Rey Star Wars."
Yeah, pretty much.
I was like, and the person who uploaded was like, "It's just as stupid as the actual."
I'm Rey protagonist. I'm just like main character lady.
Yeah.
Generic. But yeah, I mean, I'll go through my dot points, and when we run out of time, they're not in any order, and
that's all right.
So in the Last Jedi review, we talked about public perception and how once the prequels came out, people thought that's what Star Wars is, and it ruined it. And now the sequels have come out, and people think that's what Star Wars is, and it ruined it. And Rian Johnson made Luke cynical and just a grumpy old hermit, and now like that's what's canon, and that's what. And considering there's no explanation as to what happened in the 30 years between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, it's like that's the only Luke we get after Return of the Jedi in the new Disney canon, which I don't take seriously. But you know what I mean? Like public perception now, general audiences are like, well, that was what Luke was. And I think it ties into Rise of Skywalker. That this is what people think it is. Star Wars is now.
Yeah.
That's right. It's nonsense.
It's space lasers and lightsabers. That is the entire and the Force.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit, no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans, and there are actual toxic fans, and there are actually racist, misogynistic people who take the series too seriously. But there are people like us who have legitimate criticisms. And the public perception of Star Wars and Star Wars fans, and they're a bunch of neckbeards, ignore them. It's gotten to its most heightened point.
Yeah,
it's
because if anybody criticizes the new movies, the assumption is it comes from a political point of view as opposed to a cultural, artistic point of view.
Yeah, and that's the thing is now people think of Star Wars. And they just think of the controversy, and they just think of the nonsense.
Yeah.
Rather than we have more right than anyone to be angry at Disney and be angry at what they've done to Star Wars and be angry at the bullshit in the Star Wars movies. And it changes how people feel about it.
Yeah.
To a point where yeah, it's like it shouldn't have gotten to this point.
No.
It's I think it's because people are
and it's not fans' fault as much as they like to point the finger at us.
It goes back to what we were discussing earlier about the way that they're running LucasArts. Kathleen Kennedy probably doesn't give that many shits about Star Wars.
No.
Like JJ does, sure, but you know,
but he doesn't understand.
He doesn't understand like what's good about it.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that issue of like that Marvel, Disney, LucasArts comparison where it's like you got Kevin Feige who sits there, he loves the shit out of Marvel and he has that wall in his room that's just the future, everything plotted out beautifully. Yeah. I guarantee you they don't have that for Star Wars.
No, they don't know what they're doing next. Like, they don't have the next film in mind. It's just like, we'll chuck money at D&D and see what happens.
As we discussed not long ago as well, like, Star Wars shouldn't just be Marvel. Like, they're different things. You can't just... You know,
but like the way they run it should be similar enough. Like in the fact that it have someone that loves the property.
Yeah. But if you are going to do a cinematic universe, and you maybe shouldn't, where everything's tied in together, you have to have a plan.
Yeah.
Or at the very, very, very least, you have to have a plan for the trilogy you're making.
Yeah,
just the 3 movies. Outside of that, you don't have to worry.
Surely that's basic baby steps 101, right? It's like you're making a trilogy. Well, at least have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Or if you're not going to have a plan for the trilogy, make sure that when you get to the second movie, don't just give it to some guy who's going to throw everything out the window. Yeah,
there has to be oversight to ensure that there's continuity.
Yeah, if J.J. Abrams had no clue what he was doing with Force Awakens, when they made Last Jedi, they should have been like, all right, J.J. Abrams doesn't know what he's doing. How are we going to pick up these threads? What are we going to do to develop them? Yeah. And then when the third movie came out, instead of just being like, J.J., you can do whatever you want, you should have been like, here's how we set up, here's how we continued your threads that you had no idea what you were doing. If you don't want to continue them further, we'll find someone else.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy has to put her foot down, and she's not. She only puts her foot down when the spin-off directors don't do what she wants.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's weird. It's really weird. I don't know. I don't understand the business. I want to be on fly in the wall in those discussions.
I'd be a very upset fly on the wall in those discussions.
I've talked about many a time. Boba Fett's my favorite character. I love him.
Nerd.
Yeah. He just looks cool. He doesn't do anything.
But, yes, go on.
But if we're getting down to it, if we're really gonna get to nitty gritty, Luke's always been my favorite character.
Oh, he's everyone's favorite
character. He's the main character of the trilogy. He's the hero. You know.
Yeah.
He's the fun boy who becomes the knight, like we said. And Jedi Knight, Return the Jedi version of Luke with the all blacked out.
He's badass, motherfucker.
Fucking love it. The green lightsaber, I love that. Yeah. My favorite lightsaber. It's that
subtle world building between movies.
Not just the blade. Green's my favorite color. Not just the blade being my favorite. The hilt, the fact that it's just Obi-Wan's hilt with like different colors because he used Obi-Wan's design to create his own.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just so cool.
And like they don't even talk about it as such. No, it's just kind of like if you pay attention.
And because it comes, it's not, we talk a lot about in The Force Awakens and Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker how they don't explain anything. We have no idea what's going on. It's like we don't need scenes. We just need visual
cues.
Visual cues, or like you can tell, or you need like one line of dialogue, like Darth Vader says, "Your training's complete. You've created a new lightsaber." That tells me,
or Boba Fett's
exactly.
What is it? No
disintegrations. That tells us a lot, So we just need stuff like that. But anyway, my point is like Luke's always been my favorite, and like that's one of the reasons why Return of the Jedi, with all its flaws, has always been my favorite Star Wars movie because of all that Luke and Vader stuff, and Luke, coming close to the dark side but pulling back, and then finally becoming the
embracing
hero.
His
embracing his father and looking off for the future, and in the EU they take that and they pay that off.
Yeah.
But in the new Disney stuff they don't. But it's like what Last Jedi did, like we talked about this at length. What Last Jedi did to Luke was a crime against cinema and humanity. And it was just so sickeningly spiteful and hateful.
Cynical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rian Johnson should be deeply ashamed. But now J.J. Abrams has come back and he's like, well, we have to have Force Ghost Luke in there. I was like, well, I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shame they killed him off. Rian Johnson ruined it for everyone. J.J. Abrams, I know he has to make the best of a bad situation. But that scene when Luke shows up as a Force ghost, I literally wanted to throw up. I felt sick.
Yeah.
It's so cheap and ugly, and it's just like the whole movie. It's just bad.
Yeah. I did kind of appreciate Luke being like, Jedi should take better care of his weapon.
Yeah,
after Rian Johnson was like, oh, who cares about lightsabers?
It's like we keep saying, it's like these movies are all fighting each other.
Yeah.
Last Jedi kept refuting things and ignoring things and subverting things from Force Awakens, and now J.J. Abrams comes back for Rise of Skywalker, and he has to refute and subvert things from Last Jedi. So it's like J.J. Abrams, even though I understand it more coming from him, is also responsible for the same crimes Rian Johnson was. He's doing the same thing.
In a way, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And now he's refuting. We talked about it, there are multiple points in Rise of Skywalker where they refute things from Last Jedi.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the things I thought was a bit disgusting was Rose Tico.
Yes.
There was a lot of backlash from very angry young men on the internet who don't deserve to have access to the same forums that most people do, who did not like the diversity of Last Jedi. We all agreed, what's the actress's name?
Kelly Marie Tran.
Yeah, she's a fine actress.
Yeah.
Like we said at the time, don't blame her. She's just doing what she's told to do. Her character is shit.
Rose is a terrible written character and should be cut out of the film, and I hate her.
Yeah, but it's not her fault.
But it's not because she's Asian, and it's not because of the actress.
No, and so I feel like when JJ basically removed her from the story completely, I was kind of like, it feels like he made a concession to these incels.
That's what Ryan did to Force Awakens. He's like, I'm just going to get rid of all this.
I mean,
and now JJ's doing it to Last Jedi. It's getting a taste of his own medicine. But it's still a bad choice, and especially in this case, it's kind of sad.
It feels like he made a concession to these idiots on the internet.
Almost, yeah.
Even if that's obviously, I don't think he did,
that's
but I'm saying
intended,
that's exactly. That's
the optics.
I think we talked about in the last episode, it's like they're trying so hard not to be racist that they end up being racist.
Yeah, we don't want to offend anyone, better take her out of the story.
Yeah, it's like, I think, he was doing it for the same reasons. We were like, she's shit and get rid of her. But it's like, it ends up feeling like, oh, that's kind of...
That's kind of people didn't like her because X, Y, and Z, bad reasons.
Much like The Last Jedi should have paid things off in The Force Awakens, even though The Force Awakens sucked and those threads weren't going anywhere. Much in the same way, Rise of the Skywalker should have taken threads from Last Jedi and paid those off.
Yeah.
I
feel like
it's all a bad situation.
It seems so immature when we talk about it.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's like Rian Johnson's like, oh, JJ sucks.
But that's what I said at the start of the episode of the show is like, it's the battle of the fragile egos.
Yeah, it's so immature.
Big directors who are given money and power, and they're both like, no, I'm going to... And I said in the last episode, they're both kids pulling the toy until it breaks, and neither of them get it.
Yeah.
And none of us get... None of the
we all lose
the
toy.
fans. The fans can't get it and play with it anymore. But my point was, Luke went from my favourite character to literally making me want to throw up. That is these movies in a nutshell.
I'm sorry. That's Jake Skywalker, not Luke.
Yeah. But that's these movies, Disney Star Wars in a nutshell, is it took something and it shat all over it. I went from wanting Emperor Palpatine to be defeated at the end of the Return of the Jedi to him. I wanted him to win at the end of Rise of Skywalker.
Do you remember the?
That's all you need to know.
I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but before The Force Awakens came out, before the trailers came out, there was such a sense of optimism.
Yeah,
it was like there's new Star Wars movies coming. I'm excited. Like how good it was to be alive in an era when there was a new trilogy coming, and now this era's over, and we're like. I don't want Star Wars anymore.
Because of the prequels, I had reservations. But I didn't know it was going to get this bad.
I know.
Even after Force Awakens, I hated Force Awakens, but I was a little bit hopeful. But Last Jedi killed everything I had, and now after Rise of Skywalker, I'm just like, so fucking done.
Yeah.
But because we have this show and it's so fun to analyze and deep dive and pick it apart, it's like I don't know what's going to happen in the future. And Mandalorian it's kind of okay.
Yeah.
They're going to ruin that with the movie, though. You just watch.
Well, yeah. Season 2, Baby Yoda.
Well, Rian Johnson wants to direct an episode, so
as long as he doesn't write it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So one good thing I'll say about Rise of Skywalker is that
it ended.
Yeah, is that I don't have to watch it anymore. Is that like, yes, what they did with Leia, they kind of had to. It wasn't great. I think maybe they should have just started the movie with Leia's funeral and just gotten it out of the way.
Yeah, I would have done that.
And maybe at the end of the movie it could have been a celebration, maybe a statue of Leia, something dumb, and it could have like bookended the film by having like, yes, we start the movie on a sour note, but we end
celebrating
the movie
her.
by celebrating her and celebrating the heroes of the original trilogy. Maybe there's a statue of Luke and Han as well because they're all dead now.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
You know, I'm just, talking out my ass.
Why didn't we get that at all? They seem to be kind of like erasing the past.
Because it's like we talk about Disney's revisionist history.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams loves Star Wars, but at the end of the day, he's making a safe Disney movie that erases the original trilogy from the face of the planet. All the stuff that happens in Rise of Skywalker negates all the stuff that happens in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Negates Darth Vader's sacrifice. Negates Luke's defeating the Emperor.
But we don't need Luke now. We have Rey.
Exactly. That's what these movies are doing.
It's like a physical...
Yeah, they're erasing. But like, so what they did with Leia, not great.
Understandable, though.
They kind of understandable. One good thing I'll say is that Chewie's reaction to Leia's death was appropriate.
Yeah.
He's just like, where was that when Han died?
Look,
where
no. To be fair, when Han died, shit was going down. Like, it's
true. But you know what I'm saying,
Chewie took the kill shot.
True, yeah.
He did.
He was like down. Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna get revenge. No time to grieve. I'm gonna shoot my nephew. I guess technically Uncle Chewie. So it's like, I'm gonna shoot my nephew in the guts.
What about when Han died? Did we see any reaction from Chewie after Luke died? Rather.
Yeah, when Luke died, no one grieves.
Yeah, it's like, the old angry man popped off.
It's also because he farts himself to death on a faraway planet where no one knows he's dead.
So do you reckon
Except for maybe Leia, who sensed it, and so she probably just told everyone after the credits.
And everyone's
rolled.
like, who?
And they were like,
yeah,
like, I haven't seen him in 30 years. That's a shame. Moving on.
It's a shame we didn't keep in touch. But so that was everything's handled poorly. But the other thing was,
Han should have been like, I never liked him anyway.
Yeah, damn kid going off on adventures. But anyways, what was I saying? So then the other thing was, when Han dies, and then this is another thing that Last Jedi fucked up, which I think we mentioned it in the Last Jedi review, but we didn't actually expand upon it. So we'll talk about it now, where like Rey comes to the island and says like, I think Chewie's there too, and Luke says, "Where's Han?" And then it just cuts. There was a deleted scene, which you can see on YouTube, of like Luke going into his little hut and like breaking down. And
that would have been cool.
Rian Johnson cut that out of the movie. So that shows you he's an idiot. He doesn't know how to make a film. He doesn't know how to make an emotional impact.
That would have been...
He doesn't know how to develop characters.
That would have been an incredibly powerful scene.
And I think the worst part of all this is he cut it, I guess, assumedly for time, but there are so many slapsticky fart jokes.
Yeah.
Luke drinking green titty milk, fucking goblins burping on BB-8 and trying to use him as a slot machine.
Yeah.
Cut out all that shit.
Yeah.
Make the movie like maybe even Luke could use that if this movie was better written. Like Luke could use that as an excuse to say, Rey, give up. Han died, and Kylo was his son.
Yeah,
so if you're a nobody,
the Force.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the dark side is so powerful that it doesn't. Who are you to?
I'm not opposed to what I am opposed to what Rian Johnson did to Luke. But if you are gonna do it well.
Yeah,
execute the shit out of it. And Rian Johnson didn't do that because he's a fucking idiot when it comes to Star Wars. When it comes to all other movies,
he's like, Knives Out was good.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Just don't give him a franchise, like we said before.
What else?
Or at least give him a franchise he likes.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about this last episode. It's hinted that Finn has force powers.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what the fuck? Where are they pulling this out of?
What you got? Also, what you gone back to saying before about how they say these things.
No, that's
No, there's a recent interview where J.J. J.J. Abrams and John Boyega confirmed that that's what he was going to apparently say.
Oh, they confirmed it?
Because it was confirmed in an interview.
My assumption,
I love you.
My assumption was it was just another J.J. mystery box where it's like, oh, what was Finn going to say?
Apparently it was meant to be...
I assumed it was I love you because he's been chasing her around this whole trilogy, but it's such a cold, distant relationship like between them, and she always friend zones him.
It was supposed to be, according to an interview, it was supposed to be, I think I have Force powers.
Why wasn't that paid off?
Yeah.
Because it's introduced in the last movie in this crazy, bizarre menagerie. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Of like stuff flying around and new stuff being introduced.
Another word to use is shit show.
Shit show. Yeah, that's the most apt description. But like, it's like I remember when Force Awakens came out and like Finn was on the poster with the lightsaber and like Rey's in the background with her staff. And we were kind of speculating, like, maybe they share the lightsaber because they're both Force sensitive and Luke will train them both until they can create their own lightsabers, you know? How cool would that have been?
More innocent days.
Yeah, like, and then it's like Finn is just a useless character who can be cut out of the film. And I'm so just sad and disappointed. And I feel bad for John Boyega. And I feel bad for all the cast members.
Daisy Ridley. Bad too, allegedly.
Oh, yeah. Well, we talked about this, I think, off air, maybe on air as well, where I think after all said and done, maybe in a few years' time, John Boyega is going to go savage on all the fucking...
From what I've quoted...
What they did to his character.
I'm paraphrasing here, but he's apparently been quoted saying they did me dirty.
No, that was me paraphrasing his tone. Okay.
Yeah.
So last...
He said
last
The Last
week,
Jedi's a bit iffy.
Yeah. So he's officially has said that how they dealt with my character in The Last Jedi, they could have done better.
Yeah.
And I think he was also saying like...
That was very diplomatic.
Yeah, it's like what they did with Rose, and it's like us being like people of color, like they treated us poorly. And I was saying, paraphrasing that, and it's like, they done me dirty. Like that's what he was hinting at. And he's come out and said a few other things. And he, in interviews when they ask him interviewers always ask dumb questions to movie stars. And they always laugh it off and go, oh, yeah, well, I think this. And he's always, you can tell he's like laughing it off, but he's always like, they fucked me,
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping in a couple of years' time he just goes full, all steam ahead, like, fuck them, they fucked me. But yeah, I feel bad for all the cast members because all the cast has been pretty good. It's just they've been poorly utilized.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a shame.
It's not a problem with the talent.
No.
Yeah. It's a Game of Thrones Season 8 situation. The production design for special effects, amazing. The cast, amazing. It's the writing and directing that was bad.
Yeah.
And so when all the fans yell and carry on and get mad, it's not at the actors. It's not, and I feel bad for the actors who feel like they're being
targeted.
Attacked. Certainly some are targeted. But like you said, they're
not
representative of actual
and there is that toxic...
fans.
Yeah, there are that toxic like fandom who are like... send people death threats, and I'm just like, fuck those people.
They're not real fans.
They're not real fans.
They're just idiots on the internet.
Yeah, they're just yeah. Oh, look how many notes.
And we're watching James scroll through like probably 100 notes
on my phone. I don't know how many. So I think we're gonna have to do 2 more episodes.
Yeah, that's fine.
One tying up the Rise of Skywalker, and then one where we talk about like how like the EU and how Force Awakens could be good. Because I got ideas, man.
I'm down with that. That's when we're at our best, when we're making shit up about movies.
Nerding out. Oh yeah, speaking of Luke's green lightsaber, never seen any of the Disney films.
No.
So assumedly except when he goes to kill Kylo in the worst fucking scene. So assumedly when he went to exile, he threw it in the ocean or something. What's with people and throwing lightsabers into the ocean in this series? But yeah, it's a shame because I said in my Force Awakens review how bringing Anakin/Luke's original blue lightsaber back was the biggest mistake, because the only reason JJ did it was for nostalgia reasons. Was for remember Luke's blue lightsaber from the original movie. Remember Anakin's It was a point where nostalgia completely overrode what should have been, what needed to be done for the story and the characters, especially because it raises so many questions that were never answered. Where did Maz get Luke's old lightsaber? Why did she have it in a box in her basement?
Again, I reckon that they'll just they'll just put all of that shit in the comics and the books.
Probably, yeah.
And it'll be a huge... Even then, I feel bad for the authors who have to try and make those connections, because I guarantee you JJ didn't go into it with a plan in mind.
No. But then Rian Johnson pulled the lightsaber apart, and JJ had the perfect opportunity to retire that and bring Rey's new lightsaber in. But then they just repaired the lightsaber. Like, you see it's off screen, and she uses the blue lightsaber, and then at the end she just pulls the yellow lightsaber from her ass. You know, like the story of Rise of Skywalker should have been more about maybe creating that lightsaber. That could have been an interesting plot point. And I think when the teaser
should have been the second movie.
Exactly. And when the teaser for Rise of Skywalker came out, we were speculating like maybe it's about her finding a kyber crystal or something. That would have been a fun movie instead of like we have to find the wayfinder that goes to the thing that goes to the knife and the you know?
Yeah. So dumb.
Also, like Rey's staff thing, which I never liked, but I thought it could have been a cool idea.
Have a kyber crystal in the middle of it.
No, yeah, it's like, and we even said like she should just have a lightsaber pike, like a
that would have been cool.
At least that's kind of different. Apparently, her lightsaber at the end is the top of her staff, like the hilt. But I was like, that's kind of cool, but it's like I don't know. At this point, it's too late.
It's the final scene. It's too late.
The Luke's blue lightsaber should have never come back. Luke should have given Rey his green lightsaber as a way to pass the torch from old generation to new generation, and maybe to symbolize that he's done with fighting because that leads to the dark side. He's gone full monk zen, and that she's the warrior who will end the war, and then she can, when the next generation comes, she can do the same sort of thing. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. Yeah, you know what I mean. And that would have been cool. And then Rey could have created her own lightsaber and maybe retired the green one. I don't know. We're thinking about this a lot more than Disney did.
I know, yeah.
Also, one thing at the end of Rise of Skywalker, when they defeat the Final Order, and then you see you see Endor and all the other planets. It's like destroying other Star Destroyers that are, and it's like the special edition ending of the original trilogy where they destroy the Death Star, and then George Lucas was like, I have to show that they defeated the Empire everywhere else. And so you just get awkward shots of like CGI shots of different planets, some from the prequel trilogy, where they're like celebrating and knocking over statues of the Emperor and stuff. It's like Rise of Skywalker kind of does a similar thing. It's really awkward. People have very narrow minds and lack imagination. When I
find their lack of imagination disturbing.
Yeah, exactly. They lack vision. Like when they watch the original trilogy, like they see problems that aren't there, and when the prequels and sequels come out and try to reinterpret things that happen or change things that happen in the original trilogy, they go, see, that's so smart, see? And it's like, no, that's dumb. That doesn't need to be explained. When Rogue One came out and they explained that the guy who designed the Death Star deliberately designed it with a flaw so they could shoot the torpedo in. And I'm like, that didn't need to be explained.
No.
That is not a problem with the original trilogy.
No.
People are like, see, they finally explained that plot hole. I'm like, you don't know what a plot hole is. You're an idiot. And it's the same in Rise of Skywalker or the special edition of Return of the Jedi, where they show all the planets finally, getting free of the Empire and defeating the Empire around the galaxy. And it's like people like, see, at the Return of the Jedi, they wouldn't have defeated all, so they have to show. And I'm like, no, it's a symbolic victory. The rebellion has finally gotten together and defeated the ultimate evil in the universe. Yes, it'll take years for them to mop up all the Empire,
but it's just
that's not the point. Exactly. And the EU deals with that. Force Awakens ignores all that and just has the First Order's here now. It's like, huh? But people like to have all this mental gymnastics and like to make problems that weren't there. They like to they watch the original trilogy and they go, that's old and slow and quaint.
Yeah.
And it's like these new flashy movies fix everything. The Last Jedi fixed all the problems that Star Wars had. I was like, what problems? You're making problems up in your mind. Yeah. Rian Johnson is making up problems and then immediately fixing them in every scene, which we talked about. I won't get into, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and you're going, it's so smart, it's so subverting, it's so dark and edgy. And I'm just like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about.
Star Wars shouldn't be dark and edgy. in my opinion.
Empire Strikes Back is as dark and edgy as it should be. It's a dark movie that ends on a sour note. Characters are more developed and are a bit more complex, but it still, at the end of the day, retains that swashbuckling adventure, that romance, both relationship romance and sweeping adventure romance. You know, it's still. That's why Empire Strikes Back objectively is the best Star Wars movie, even though I like Return of the Jedi more for my personal subjective reasons. Like, Empire Strikes Back is truly...
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah. Whereas you get Last Jedi and people are like, it's the best since Empire. And I'm like, you completely misunderstand why Empire was good. Because it still retained the magic of the original Star Wars while taking it in a bold new direction, which you thought Last Jedi was doing, which it clearly wasn't. Also, in Rise of Skywalker, the Emperor is like, I got to have the final order. My fleet will destroy the galaxy. And then all the OG Star Destroyers come out like from under the ground.
And they all have Starkiller based weapons.
Exactly. But they're OG, they're like original style Star Destroyers, not First Order ones. But they all have planet-killing weapons on them. Again, planet-killing weapons. They're so obsessed. If everyone, like we talked about this Last Jedi, if the Dreadnought has a planet-killing, if all these have planet-killing weapons, what's the point? Everyone can just kill each other all the time.
Yeah.
It's the same with the Force powers. If everyone's so powerful, no one is.
Yeah.
It cancels each other out.
Look, the prequels caused this problem, so I'm not going to lay it all at the hands of the Disney.
But I think Disney doubled down on it.
No, I'm talking about the amount of lightsabers and the importance people focus on lightsabers. In the original, Sith didn't even use lightsabers. That's one thing I loved was Palpatine says, haha, look at you, or whatever, I'm going to butcher this quote. Weapon. But it's like, look at your Jedi's weapon. Yeah. It's like, he's a Sith. Exactly. He doesn't use lightsabers.
That's what I always like. Again, world building, subtle world building through one vague line. Yeah. Like, it's a Jedi's weapon. And the only reason Darth Vader has one is because he was a Jedi.
He was a Jedi.
The word Sith is never mentioned in the original trilogy.
No, that's right.
It's you go to the dark side.
Yeah.
In the original EU, Sith was a thing, but it was like they were like an ancient kind of. It's
they were their own race at some point.
Yeah. It's like you're either a Jedi or you're a dark Jedi.
That's right.
That's cool.
Yeah,
you know,
and I like the idea that the Jedi is the more yes, they have the lightsaber and they're more like empathetic or whatever, and they heal or whatever. But I like the idea of the Sith as a kind of like a dark force.
I think we also talked about probably in the Last Jedi. We're probably re-going over a lot of points, but they're relevant,
salient points.
Yeah. It's like Yoda. I hate in Attack of the Clones when Yoda pulls out this little baby lightsaber. I hate it. I hate it. Like, Yoda shouldn't have a lightsaber. Not every Jedi, like I said before, the Jedi aren't a school of uniformed policemen. It's like a more of a fluid thing of like
Yoda's gangster enough. It doesn't need a lightsaber.
Yeah, exactly. Some Jedi are just so powerful and so zen. They've never even constructed or held a lightsaber.
They don't fight. It's just like, they solve problems through more diplomatic means.
The fight in Attack of the Clones with Dooku should have been a battle of minds.
Yeah.
And I think, again, why Empire is so great, it illustrates that everything on Dagobah is what the Force is.
That's right.
It's like, size matters not,
Yeah.
That's it.
Or do not. There is no try.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, that one doesn't make so much sense. But,
there is no spoon?
There is no spoon. Oh, man, when Matrix 4 comes out, holy shit, we're going to have another 5-hour discussion. But, like, that's what the Force...
Yeah.
Like... And the Rise of Skywalker, like the prequels, it negates that by being like, they're just wizards now.
Yeah, that's right.
Who can just, throw things throw lightning from their hands and fly.
When Luke tries to use the Force in Empire, he doesn't always succeed. He struggles because it doesn't come naturally to him.
Yeah,
because it shouldn't come natural to anyone.
You have to train and develop. But even when you are a Jedi Master and like Yoda, it's still... It's like a powerful telekinesis. It's not Leia curing death, curing herself of Superman. The vacuum of space, and then Mary Poppinsing back into the ship. That's not what it is. It's not Rey curing death, or I should say, Kylo cures death because he brings Rey back. Like, that's not what the Force is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of
they don't understand.
Yeah. But what I was saying about Star Destroyers was that they're OG ones, but they've gotten the new cannons, but they come out of the ground. So how long have they been there? Have they been there for 30 years? Or were they newly created were they retrofitted with the cannons?
Man,
but
can I just interrupt you and say... I mean this with love. Who cares?
Yeah, nothing in the, nothing.
It's so dumb. Like
nothing in the Disney movies, Star Wars movies makes sense. But Rise of Skywalker especially, nothing makes sense.
No, nothing. It looks cool.
Yeah, literally nothing.
But like they can't. But they're all fully manned by crews. And they have these new red Sith, they're called Sith Troopers, who are just red Stormtroopers. I'm like, have they been underground all this time?
We've seen those troopers before.
No, they're different.
They're not just they're just normal Stormtroopers with red. Yeah.
It's like, where do they, what?
Yeah, don't think it, Jay. Yeah, so you'll go crazy, like JJ.
I just wanted one with like the Nike stripes.
There was you've probably seen it, but there was like I can't remember what it was like. It's like a stormtrooper. It's like OG stormtrooper, but he's got like Adidas stripes. It's like an Adidas tracksuit.
Yeah, the Adidas track. That's what I was referencing. I want one. And I want the clock.
Yeah, instead of the boots, he's got like the shell toe. Adidas Superstars. So
I just want them running down the hallway.
Yeah. God, I can't even read the notes. There's so many. Oh yeah, C-3PO's quote unquote sacrifice was made to be this huge thing in the trailer, like he's going to give up his life or give up his memory for...
And one of the cheesiest lines in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing? I'm taking one last look.
People he doesn't even know, and people who don't even like him.
All your friends are dead, C-3PO.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was he not using a bowcaster in the trailer?
No, that was in the poster, and we were all joking about how dumb it was. And then in the movie, when they're escaping the Star Destroyer and they're taking the dagger and Chewie's stuff, they like give C-3PO Chewie's bowcaster, and he's just holding it like, oh no, he's like falling over.
Yeah.
And I think I turned to Nathan or Callum, and I was like, see, they did it, but it wasn't in the way we thought. Where it's shooting. But anyway, if they were gonna make a big deal of like C-3PO being a plot point, like being part of the MacGuffin of like finding the 7 MacGuffins in this movie, make his sacrifice more meaningful. Because in the next scene, they make a couple jokes. Next scene, he gets his memory back. Done.
They should have made it permanent.
They should have either made it permanent, so he is still alive, but he doesn't remember anyone, and he's just like, at the end of the movie, he could have gone up to R2 and been like, hello, what's your name? And beep, beep, beep. And it'll be like, oh, that's a nice name, people, and it's that would be nice, kind of bittersweet. Alternatively,
do you have any spice?
Alternatively, Poe's got some from his old spice running days. You're a spice runner? Oh, yeah, I'm a spice runner. They fly now? Yeah,
we better fit some backstory in here quick. We're nearly at the end of the trilogy.
Hey, we have to introduce this new love interest for Poe, and then she's gone. But like either have that or kill him off.
Yeah,
like have him be destroyed and like sacrifice himself. Don't pretend you're gonna do it and then not do it. See, there's a lot of fake outs. I remember when Last Jedi came out, in our review, we talked about like every scene is like a fake out or a twist, and then it immediately reverts itself back to how it was before. And so nothing needs to happen. Nothing makes sense. This movie has a lot of fake outs, and like, you think Chewie's dead? No, he's alive. You think Kylo's dead? No, he's alive. You think C-3PO is going to die? No, he's alive. It's all fake. It means nothing. So when a character does die, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And especially because now if a Force user dies and they can come back as a ghost, it's like, well, literally every Jedi who dies can just live forever as a powerful ghost. Because we've seen now they can have physical effects.
Yeah, I mean, in the original canon, they could kind of... I use the word materialize loosely for a short period of time, and that was it. It was like while their essence still had some connection.
We talked about in the Last Jedi review.
Like they can't really do magic tricks.
Yeah, now they can physically interact and still use the Force. So they're basically just immortal gods. It's like we said, they don't understand the Force. They've changed what the Force is.
And I think half that is down to that disappearing act they do almost. It's just like there's that sort of notion in the new trilogy especially where it's like when a Jedi or a powerful Force wielder dies, they go poof, and it's almost like their body now is in another dimension and they can come across and be like zap, zap, zap. Like,
no, I think because that happens in the original trilogy. Like, if you're a Jedi and you die, your body becomes one with the Force.
Yeah, but
that's what it does. It becomes one with the Force, and you're now a ghost.
Yeah, but if you
eventually
it dissipates. Them manifest physically.
Yeah, no, I think.
But that's what I'm saying.
People's interpretation of it was a little different back in the day.
In the new movies, like they reinterpret what the Force is. They change it into you disappear, but you become a god.
Yeah,
it's dumb.
I just feel like
it just raises too many questions of like all the Jedi for 1,000 generations should be ghosts walking around.
I want to see
being able
the undead Jedi councils.
Yeah, exactly. Why was Palpatine allowed to come to power in the first place? Not in the new movie, in the original trilogy. If a Force ghost can have a physical effect, it's dumb. It's just stupid.
We just need Mace Windu to come out and Samuel Jackson to be like, throw you out of a window, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like,
they should have done that. I would have been happy with that.
Palpatine's sitting there in his tower in the prequel movies. Ghost Windu comes out. Bang!
Revenge, bitch.
Yeah.
How did Rey know where Luke's old farmhouse was? Nothing makes sense.
C-3PO, maybe?
Kylo...
R2, R2 would have been able to tell her.
We've talked about many times how Kylo is the most interesting character. Adam Driver's always good. And I've talked about how maybe he should have just been the main character if that's, they were never going to do that, and they never should do that. But in hindsight, it's like maybe if they were going to make these movies, it should have just been about his journey from the dark side to the light side. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be down with that.
Yeah. But it's like, it would have been interesting if they developed that over the course of 3 movies, and at the end of the movie, he embraces the Skywalker name. I know he's a Solo, but that's just But like then it comes into the other problems of like maybe he should have like Rey should have just been a Skywalker, and maybe Kylo should have just been her brother who went to the dark side. And Ben Skywalker makes more sense than Ben Solo because, Luke...
And that way they could have kissed and it would have fit the overarching theme of incest in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, having a movie about Luke training his son and daughter, and the son going off and becoming bad, and the daughter having to get him back, and Luke losing faith in himself.
Yeah, it's a very expansive universe theme as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we'll talk about in another episode... is it Anakin who becomes the bad? No, it's Jason Solo who becomes Darth Caedus.
Yeah, that's the one.
Fuck, man, we could go on an hour tangent just on that.
And there's a whole thing about, I think it's called flow walking. It's like different, like Jedi battle stances and stuff.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, it gets pretty crazy.
But yeah, like it would have been interesting, if that was kind of the story. It's like bringing him back. And me personally, we'll talk about this in the other episodes, but like. I think Kylo should have been non-related to anyone.
Yeah.
And the heroes should have just been Skywalkers or Solos.
Yeah. Like
maybe Rey Solo and Ben Skywalker go up against the evil Kylo Ren.
Darth Jar Jar.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's another story. That's another discussion.
But yeah, no, I agree.
But you know what I mean?
And, like I said, I think it would have been cool if it wasn't...
And that's not to say Kylo couldn't have been a student of Luke's, but he's just not related.
No, that's right.
Much better.
Cleaner.
Apparently Michael Arndt, who wrote the first draft of Force Awakens, I don't know exactly, but I think Kylo wasn't related at that time. And it had some more interesting parts in it. And then, of course, JJ came in and just turned it into a remake of A New Hope, So I would be interested to see like how that would have went. Oh, yeah. If they needed the Wayfinder to get to the Sith planet, then how did Lando and the rest of them find it without it? And if they needed that navigational array so the Final Order fleet could leave, like how did
they should need? Then the rebels or whatever should need it to stay
leave
orientated.
As well. Yeah, and it's like why can't they just fly in a straight line? Because they don't make it clear that nebula has negative effects on. Anyway, dumb. God damn.
Classic Star Wars.
Classic Disney.
Yeah.
Not classic Star Wars.
Why couldn't they just keep making hyperdrive skips until they got there?
Well, yeah, that's been established that now lightspeed is magic and the Force is magic because they can teleport and
so
teleport.
They could just keep doing skips until they get there.
Yeah. Rey could just reach through the Force and like drop a navigational beacon.
She's really powerful. Wasn't she just like magic a ship to Kylo Ren?
Yeah.
Why can't she just Force meld with Kylo Ren and just drop a fucking bomb?
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point.
Just drop a grenade in his quarters while he's sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked. I think we talked about this last episode. It was like Rey could have just Force projected to
stuck a lightsaber in him.
To Palpatine and just like punch him in the face and that end. All right, we'll end up. I'll cut down my notes so we actually know what we're going to talk about next week. Next week, I think we'll wrap up the Rise of Skywalker discussion, which, like we said, like there's not even enough to talk about because it's just dumb. Like Last Jedi was dumb and a bad movie,
but it was offensive. But it was and offensive. We had to articulate our feelings.
Exactly. And you could also pinpoint like how Rian Johnson was mistaking his own smartness.
Smugness.
Yeah, exactly. And whereas here it's just a bizarre shit show of nonsense, and it's like we can't even talk about it. So I think next week we'll wrap up like the Rise of Skywalker portion of this discussion, and then maybe in the end of that episode or another episode after that, we'll talk about like how
what should have been.
Yeah, how the original EU and how the Force Awakens could have been good, and we talk about how fan fiction-y bullshit these movies are, especially Rise of Skywalker. Wait till you hear my fan fiction.
I know, same thing. Yeah.
Because, man, I got ideas. I was talking about Ben Skywalker and Rey Solo. I got ideas. Don't you worry. Man. Oh, man. Yeah, so still more Star Wars to come. Then after that, we'll do maybe a Mandalorian Season 1 wrap-up, Witcher Season 1 wrap-up.
And then we'll jerk off fan fiction.
Watchmen,
yeah.
No, fan fiction's before that.
Oh, okay.
Then so... Listeners, I know there's been a lot of Star Wars episodes of the Tuesday Review, but
we have to finish our own saga.
Power through.
That's right.
If Disney wasted all that time and money, we can waste our time and no money on, and you can listen to it because our ideas are better than their ideas. That's the other thing. I was on the phone to Matt, as I was saying at the start of the show. I was like, they wasted so much money on this. It's like hundreds of $1 million. It's such a shame.
Yeah.
Anyway. Till next week, we'll be picking up this discussion. Happy New Year, everyone, and may the Force be with you.
Thank you for listening. Like and share the Tuesday Review Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Tuesday Review AU. You can follow James on Instagram at Channel Drifter, where he posts about every movie he watches that we don't talk about on the show. You can find our previous episodes on your favorite podcasting app. If you enjoy card discussion, check out Matty J's show Car Talk, TORQUE. And if you're interested in video games, check out Nathan, Callum, and Jake's show, Sunrise Arcade. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Tuesday Review on iTunes. Adios, cousins.